So today we have Mikey here. We are working on a car on a lift. You can do this install on jack stands or race ramps, but we're putting it on a lift so we could show you how to do this easily. Now, you can do this install without removing the front fascia of the vehicle, and we're gonna walk you through all those steps right now. Now that we have the car in the air, the first step is gonna be removing the belly pan. So your primary, or actually, yeah, primary and then secondary here. You're gonna wanna remove the rear setup first and then move forward to the front setup. You're gonna have a couple, I believe these are 10 mil bolts. Another set of 10 mil bolts here, and then a bunch of push clips and 7mm bolts across the front. We'll go ahead and remove this and show you the next step. So at this point, we have all of that removed and we gain access to the front bumper. Now in this instance, our customer attempted to install the center mount on here. He didn't feel comfortable doing it, so he brought it down to us. He's now requested to move it offset to the side, so we're gonna show you how to do that. Keep in mind, if you do not want it center mount where it's open, you would have to trim the plastic. So there, you'll see these plastic clips that are holding the crash absorber on there. They're snapped in by these clips on both sides, so you can trim this without any ill effects. But basically, we need to drill into this crash bar to mount our receiver, so that way the tow hook can go through the front grille, as you can see here, and stick out and work as intended. Or if you're doing a license plate holder, so the shaft can come out and you can mount the license plate setup. So when you're choosing where you want it, whether it's the center mount or offset side to side, you want to set it up to where your receiver is going to be dead center with one of the openings in your hole. Now you'll notice you'll have a primary bracket on both sides here. You don't want to line it up with that and not have your shaft be able to come through. And then also keep in mind you have the very edge barrier for the air going to your brakes, I believe is the setup on this one. So we'll have to line it up just on the inside, so that way our shaft is coming out of this hole right here. So when we line up the receiver, which I'll show you next, we'll want to make sure it's perfectly lined up so the receiver sticks through. So in this instance, we have the tow hook, we have the bolts to mount the receiver, we have the actual receiver, and because this is also the license plate setup, he has the hardware for that. So I'm going to set that to the side. But basically, you'll see this receiver here. The receiver is what we're actually mounting to the crash bar, and apologies, it's dark in here. But basically what you're gonna do, and again, this customer originally was gonna do center mount, but decided to bail and have us do the install. He decided to also move it to the offset to the passenger side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim this black portion. A Dremel works really well. We're not cutting into the metal, we're just cutting the plastic piece so our receiver sits flush. You do want the receiver to sit about midway on the crash bar, maybe a little bit more forward than midway, so that way you can actually reach the bolts up top, because you're going to be drilling a hole through the bottom of the crash bar and the top of the crash bar. You're going to want to make sure you have a really good drill bit. This metal is super hard, but it is possible to drill through and get our bolts and nuts in there. So we're going to go ahead and trim this plastic, get this mounted in position, and we'll talk you through how to drill the holes. So we marked our area where our receiver is going to mount to. We just marked the plastic so we're not cutting more than we have to. And now we're just going to cut that out. So we cut off the area of plastic that we needed. You can see our receiver fit right in there, and we've already marked our holes to drill. Now at this point we're going to get a drill bit. Now keep in mind, you're going to be drilling through the crash bar, and I'm going to try to show you. There's the top area. There's two, it's kind of two layers up there, and again, sorry for the lighting, but we're only going through the bottom portion of the crash bar, and the nut is going to sit up in this area right here. So we just got to drill the hole right through it and get it set up. So we'll show you how to do that. So what we are going to start off doing, ultimately we want to get up to 3/8 inch bit or a little bit larger. The holes can be a little bit larger than the actual bolt, but the bolt is a 3/8. We're going to start with a pilot bit, so that way we don't mess up our big bit right away, because this metal is extremely hard. So we're going to start the pilot hole, then we'll get the bigger bit and drill it out, and then go from there. So we're through the first layer, now we're drilling through the second layer. I think we did. So one thing to highlight, we did move our holes back just a little bit. We measured the shaft and where the positioning was, and we felt this position was a little bit better. It also gave you more clearance of your front fascia. Now, keep in mind, we're doing this without pulling the front fascia. If you do want to pull the front bumper off your vehicle, this will be exponentially easier, but do know you can do it both ways. Now in this instance, we have our pilot holes drilled. Now we're gonna get our 3/8 inch bit and widen these holes out so we can get our bolts and mount the receiver properly. So we have our bigger bit. Now we're gonna go ahead and make these holes bigger. And again, it becomes exponentially easier with bottom ones widen out. Now we got to get up in there and get the top ones widened out. So you definitely want to make sure you have a bit that's long enough. As you can see, our bit is definitely long enough. So we'll go ahead and get these upper ones. So you are going to need a 9/16 wrench and socket. We are going to be putting the nut on the top side and the bolt threads through on the bottom side with the washer. And we'll go ahead and stick that in position. Now it is a tight squeeze up. Look, I can't even get the camera. It's a tight squeeze up in here. But Mikey's getting it threaded on there. And we can get the second set threaded on. And once these are in place, we can then tighten these up. Now the biggest thing that you want to be careful of when you're wrenching here is you do have your condenser sitting right here. So holding your tools and moving your tools up in here. So we're going to use a ratchet on the top side to hold the nut in place and an impact on the bottom to tighten it up. But just make sure you're holding that ratchet in position to where it doesn't swing around and puncture a hole in your condenser. That would be bad. So our receiver is now bolted in place. It is now a permanent part of the car for the most part. And now we can thread the shaft in. So let's get the shaft on. So I have the shaft. I did take the D-ring off of this. It does make it easier for the install. So that way the tow hook doesn't actually hit the front bumper or scratch it. And the nice thing is on the D-ring, there is an adjustable nut here. So that way you can let the heim joint come in and out. So that way you can set it at the depth or as close to your car as you want. And that's just setting the distance and screwing this in accordingly. And then we'll go ahead and also thread the black chromoly shaft all the way in. You may need a small wrench or to tighten this up because it is a very tight fit as designed. And we'll get the D-ring on. So let's get that done. So we used an 11/16 wrench to tighten the chromoly shaft, and then we used a 3/4 inch to tighten the outside bolt on the heim joint. And then we used a 10 mil Allen key to remove the bolt for the D-ring. And now that we have this all tightened and lined up in place, we can put the hardware in place. Yep, and now we can get that threaded in and tightened up. You can see the install there. Again, you do have adjustability in the heim joint to go forward and back to how you see fit. And it's good to go. So now if you are going to install a license plate holder on this setup, you can unthread the front portion of the tow hook. Obviously you want to use the 10 mil bolt so you can clear your bumper and not scratch that up. But you'll take the bolt and the lock nut and fasten the plate holder right to the black shaft. And that's it, you're good to go. So this is our premium tow hook. We do offer a Featherlight tow hook as well that removes the heim joint and has a black center section. But keep in mind, this product is not compatible with a license plate holder. We do also offer a titanium setup if that's something you want to reach for in regards to lightest weight possible. But they all install the same way. But the functionality here is the heim joint and the way it looks. Some customers like the way that looks. Some customers like the premium.